Hey guys, long time no post. um, so today we're talking about misconceptions about non-binary people. Now, I'm sure we all know that there are a lot of misconceptions about non-binary people. But I wanted to mention first a really weird misconception which I haven't heard like other people say that much, that they get this sort of comments when they talk about being non-binary, but it's happened to me multiple times and it seems really weird to me. And this is the misconception that non-binary people either don't want to be in romantic relationships or are incapable of having a functioning romantic relationship. Like, literally, when I came out to one of my therapists, not the one that I have now, she was like, she asked me like a bunch of questions, and they were some like show to kind of like the typical questions which show that she was pretty ignorant about it. But then she started asking me about my romantic relationships, which we hadn't talked about much before, but she started asking me about like my details and like who I was attracted to and stuff like that. And I was like, how is that? You know that like my gender has nothing to do with my sexuality, right? And she's like, well, yes, but I'm just afraid that it might keep you from having a functioning relationship in the future. And I was like, why? Do you think that, I won't be able to find a partner that accepts my gender? And she said, no, I think that you will have a problem with your partner's gender, which doesn't make any sense. Cause like I don't know. And Another one was when I came out to my dad. He said something different, less of a kind of slap in the face as a therapist telling you that you will never have another romantic relationship. But he was like, does that mean that you don't want a romantic relationship or sexual relationship? And I was like, no. I was like, it has nothing to do with that. It's kind of like one that I know is very common because I've heard other people get it a lot. I've gotten it too, but not that much, which is like, okay, so if you're not a boy or a girl, are you straight or what? And this is an interesting question. I mean, for me, it's like I'm bi/pansexual and romantic, so it's like it's pretty easy for me because those are orientations which have nothing to do with the relationship between my gender and the other person's gender. Yeah, so people, like, that's not exactly a misconception, but people get confused about what to label your sexuality as. A common misconception is that we are just confused about our gender. And it's like we don't know whether we're men or women. If you're questioning then you're non-binary. Basically, if you're questioning your gender, you're non-binary, but once, like, it's just a stage of questioning, and once you figure out what your gender is, it's either going to be male or female. This is clearly not true, and I don't know why someone, if you tell them non-binary is someone who's not a boy or a girl, why they would translate that. Somehow it's translated in their heads as a non-binary person is someone who is a boy or a girl but isn't sure which one they are. Like, that's... no. Just no. Another misconception, which this one really bothers me because how many non-binary people themselves actually have this misconception, which is that non-binary is only a sort of sliding scale between male and female. So, basically, other than the two binary genders, the only other options you have are a mix or a combination of the two binary genders, which is not true at all. You can have a neutral gender, you can have no gender, or you could have a gender which is completely different than male, female, or neutral gender, which is how I identify. And it's like, I just really worry that non-binary people, non-binary kids who are like just figuring things out and who are questioning, they'll like get the idea or be told that the only options you have are male, female, or some combination of the two, and they will feel something like, wow, I'm so messed up, or I'm so weird or strange that even among the weird people, there is nobody like me. And I felt that for a little bit in terms of gender during the beginning of my questioning, but not for long, luckily. But I've also felt that in a lot of other situations, and it's a really bad feeling to have. So yeah, that misconception. And how about we talk about the misconception that non-binary people are not transgender. Transgender does not mean MTF or FTM. And there are a lot of people, unfortunately there are even a lot of binary trans people who want to exclude non-binary people from the transgender community, either because they think that they're faking it, like there's no such thing as non-binary and whatever, or they think that they're not faking it, but they don't Like, we still don't count as transgender, which doesn't make any sense. Like, the way that people use transgender generally is with the definition of identifying as a gender other than the one that you were assigned at birth. Binary trans people who think that non-binary people shouldn't count as transgender. It's just more frustrating and hurtful coming from someone who has the same or similar experience than us and is like marginalized in the same way that we are marginalized. And it's just like I thought that you were safe, but you're not. And a while ago, the idea of a transgender person was always of a binary transgender person because so few people knew about non-binary genders. So you know, like nothing in the definition of transgender, there's nothing in the definition of transgender which specifies which gender you have to identify as or transition to. A transgender man is just as transgender as a transgender woman. Like, the transgender part of it means the same thing. They identify with different genders, but the transgender part is the same. So if you are now aware that there aren't just two genders or gender identities, then why would you want to exclude? Yeah, like, why would you want to exclude? Like, it's kind of like, I don't know, maybe it's kind of like homosexual. Like, I don't know much about it, but I know that generally, you know, in the bad old days, I don't know like what decade this is around, but people started using the word homosexuals as opposed to other words to refer to gay men. Now, I know that in America and England, I don't know if it was like this in other countries, but there was a period of time, I think it was in the 19th or early 20th century, or was it earlier than that? Basically, women were seen as not having any sort of sex drive. And And so, they were seen as like, you know, never wanting sex and only having sex to please their husband. Like, people knew about men being together, but a lot of times when two women were together, they would assume it was just a close friendship because at the time it was socially acceptable for women to be very affectionate, physically and emotionally affectionate with their friends, because it was seen that I guess there wasn't really a distinction between romantic and friendship, but that's something else. Anyway, so a lot of times when people started saying homosexual, they meant a homosexual man. But there was nothing in the definition of homosexual that meant it was specifically men. It was just because they didn't know that, you know, it wasn't common knowledge that women could also be homosexual. So you wouldn't exclude lesbian women from the word homosexual. What was I trying to say? Sexualities, terms. Oh, right. Okay. I remember now. I was talking about how some people, including binary trans people, think that non-binary people aren't transgender. Now, I know that because I've talked to people like this, there are non-binary people who don't identify as transgender because they feel like in their experience they've been uniformly rejected by the binary trans community. So they're like, okay, and they're rejected for being non-binary and therefore not trans somehow. So then they don't identify as trans because of that. And that's cool, but other than that, in my experience, most non-binary people identify as transgender, or at least they do once they realize that they qualify as transgender. So, I think that, if, there are non-binary people, basically what I'm trying to say is there are non-binary people who don't identify as transgender. But I think, in my experience, most people, non-binary people, identify as transgender, and the ones who don't still qualify as transgender, even if they aren't, because they don't identify that way. Yeah, I hope that makes sense. What other misconceptions? Oh, there's the misconception that a non-binary person will never be able to have either... Okay, basically, the misconception that someone who isn't... The misconception that someone who is only attracted to men or only attracted to women could not or would not be attracted to a non-binary person. It's true that, that person has, identifies as, only being attracted to one gender or possibly... No, I don't think I've ever... No, that doesn't make any sense. Yeah, so, but the thing is that, our sexuality our sexuality, results in an identity. It's not really the other way around, which means that people can have exceptions. So it's possible for there to be a woman who is only attracted to women, but then there generally is only attracted to women, but then she finds herself attracted to someone who is not a woman, and it's probably rare. And if she for example identifies as a lesbian, she may still identify as a lesbian, but she may still be attracted to someone who is non-binary. And so basically what I'm trying to say is, if you're attracted to someone who has said that they're only into one gender, don't give up hope. Because you know, like, I've heard, like, people saying, like, oh, I'm straight, but I have an exception, or, oh, I'm gay, but I have an exception, and they're, they may be confused, they may be like, am I not actually as straight or as gay as I thought? And it's possible that they're not, and they're actually bisexual or something, but it's also possible that, it really is just that one or two or three exceptions, but they still feel like they identify as either straight or gay. Either of these things is fine, and it's up to them to decide how they identify. But it's not up to them to decide whether or not to respect your gender identity if you do end up getting involved. So say you're a non-binary person and you're involved with a straight woman. If she still identifies as straight, then, that doesn't mean that she can't be with you or be attracted to you. But she has to acknowledge that even if she identifies as straight, for once she's attracted to someone who is not a man. And she can call it an exception, she can explain it however she wants in relation to her sexuality, but she can't call you a man, this hypothetical non-binary person. Like, if you have, a straight person or a gay person interested in you, but they don't want to say that they're dating someone who is non-binary to people that you are out to, if they don't want to say that, then that's disrespecting your gender identity. And so, yeah, if they're not willing to consider you and treat you as whatever your gender identity is, then they're not respecting you. I mean, this is different than slipping up pronouns and stuff, but you'll probably know the difference if you see it. Oh shit, my battery is running out. Okay, so I guess that's enough misconceptions for today. I'll see you guys next week. Please read the description. I will, because my battery is dying right now, so please read the description. Okay, bye.